Hello. Have you ever had an issue with the internet while playing a game? In this video, I'm going to be going over the 5 main ways game designers slip up when incorporating online elements into investigative games. I'll be talking about sinners and saints in each category. I'd love to hear from you about some of your online difficulties or games that you think flowed particularly well when incorporating their online elements within their games. I will be discussing a lot of games in this video. If I'm about to reveal any major spoilers, I'll definitely give you a warning before doing so. Let's have a look at the first game. I would go so far as to say, if you're a teenage girl looking for something to fill up time at a slumber party, this is a great beginner's case for you. But there is one significant issue when it comes to online content. One of this game's themes when it comes to evidence is business cards. You get a whole stack of business cards. These are from all of the characters that the lead detective in the case comes across. The reason they've gone with this theme is probably because of this fella, Davis Bateman. If you're familiar with American Psycho, the Christian Bale film based on the Bret Easton Ellis book, the lead character's name is Patrick Bateman. This character's name seems to be a bit of a wink to the American Psycho's habit of chopping up people who have better business cards than him. On each business card there is a web address, and as part of the game you'll be investigating each character by looking at their websites. And it brings us to sin number 1, which is depth of content. The game designers have clearly spent a lot of time working on one particular website where the other websites seem to be very much a rush job. On the website belonging to one particular person, I realized straight away where this game was going to be heading for its finale. I'm not going to tell you what it was, but it was just that there was a certain level of content and a certain type of content that you could tell would be really fitting to this type of game. This case is a kidnapping case, and minor spoiler here, when I looked at this website, I knew exactly what the final task was going to be. I knew my final task was going to be to find the location where she is hidden. I also knew who the killer was. I couldn't deduce this from the story detail, but just the existence of the content itself. Still Lake is a really good game. It's only available in the UK and Europe. What it does so wonderfully well is, and I guess it might be even hinted by the babushka reference here, is it does a very good job at hiding the depth of its online content. You come across a lot of different websites in this game, and one of them, on the surface, it doesn't appear to have a huge amount of content, but if you dig deeper, it has loads of content. It's a really clever way of incorporating online content into your game without tipping your hat as to where this story is going. You can rely purely on your deductive skill. This isn't only an online content issue. There are other games where the amount of game content on a particular character really acts as a warning sign as this is the person you need to focus on. Don't focus so much on the other characters that we introduced in the beginning of the game. This is the first case from the Hidden Games crime scene series. In the second case, which I also have played, they don't make this error. So if you are thinking of getting a Hidden Games case, I would recommend start with case 2. And if you enjoy that, which you probably will, consider picking up case 1. Sin number 2 belongs to another Unsolved Case Files case. This case is the Jane Doe case. This is a unique one in that in this case, you're not just trying to find who done it, you're also trying to find out who the victim is. The person was burned alive. There was only a charred skeleton that was never identified. The skeleton had a distinctive gap between their teeth. You need to discover which of these 5 people from the missing persons database was the one that was burned alive on the beach. So what is the sin here? Sin 2 is online research and how that is handled. When I first came across these mystery games, I assumed there would be some online research involved. Yet, when I played the games, I realized there was never any need to do online research. If the game wanted you to know something, it would tell you something. Most games don't assume that you have knowledge of any specialized area. As such, they have to be able to explain these concepts to you. That's a great thing. The games are usually able to teach you what you need to know in order to solve the case within the game itself. I love that aspect of these games. The Jane Doe case is quite different. You're given a list of items and you're told that you have to use these items to uncover which of the girls is missing. And you also have some additional information based on the missing persons reports for each of these girls. I can't talk about this one without giving a major spoiler here, so you have been warned. When you look at the missing person database information, you'll notice that all of these girls have similar birth dates. There's certainly a lot of people, I think, that will be able to grasp this one without too much difficulty. If you know about things like gemstones and zodiac signs, this aspect of the game is probably very simple for you. But I'm guessing a lot of men my age really have never thought about the concept of gemstones and zodiac signs. So a large part of this game is spent just wondering, like, well, what do they actually want here? And I would go through to the hints. And this game does have a good hint system. So at that point, I could know to go online to do my search. Here's a better way this could have been handled. You could have had, as part of one of the police interviews, somebody discussing the gemstones that they had bought for their wife for her birthday or something like that. That would at least tip you off onto where to go with this one. Now, this game is an absolute saint when it comes to incorporating online research in a manageable way. The issue with having to do online research in a game is this. If you know that you need to do some online research, but you don't know when you need to do it, you're going to be constantly on the internet. You're going to be constantly searching for different things that might be irrelevant. For example, if somebody says he's from Ohio and he lived on Anderson Avenue, you don't need to go to Google Maps to confirm that there is an Anderson Avenue in Ohio. It was just a throwaway sentence. It's not really a significant part of the case. But this game, Vendetta, and the other games in the Masters of Crime series, Shadows and Incognito, you can see my full review of those games if you're interested in learning more. All of the games in this series tell you exactly when you need to get online and do some research. Here is an example. So you might notice on the box we have the father, the priest figure here. Closest thing you'll find in this video to a saint. Minor spoiler here. He's actually a mafia informant. He's telling the secrets of his flock to the mafia bosses so that they can gain leverage in their neighborhood. During the confession, he'll hand you this holy Bible and you'll open it up. It'll look like the inside of a Bible. And notice on the post-it note, there is this globe symbol. And this is referring you to different sections, different passages of the Bible, which will link you to the sins of his constituents. So this is a great way of telling you you need to do some online research. It saves you lots of time and you get a lot of information quickly this way. And a great thing from a game designer's perspective is you don't even have to produce the information. You just have to tell people this is what you need to look into. It'll enhance the feeling of being an armchair detective, doing something a real-life policeman would do. Get online and see what he can find out about a specific piece of information that seems to be of importance. Sin 3, and it comes down to this. Why does this material have to be online? Why do I need to go online to find this material? And in Sin 3, you're going to find out that sinners can also be saints. So the sinner here is murder at Merivale Manor. Murder at Merivale Manor is almost a perfect case except for this one issue I have with the game. This is a fascinating, in-depth case. It's really enjoyable to go through. It's set in the 1930s. It was so immersive. Now, what was the issue? This is a minor spoiler. There's one piece of evidence that you don't really understand what on earth it's all about. And then in each Cryptic Killers case, there is an additional feature where you go online and you log in to a email server and you get access to some additional content. There is a way of turning that seemingly meaningless document that you came across earlier in the game into the smoking gun that's going to crack the case. And it's one of those things where it's like line 7, word 11, line 13, word 9. The issue I have with this is it would have been so much easier to complete this task if you just had 2 pieces of paper, one with the random document and the other one saying things like line 16, word 8. It would be much easier to have them side by side so you can just check them off as you go. Whereas by putting it online, I'm there at my desk with my computer over here. I've got the paper in front of me. I've got a notepad. And I'm going between all 3 trying to put this story together. By the time it was finished, I was just exhausted from this task. I had already achieved my goal of finding out who the killer was prior to this. Deciphering this note did add some context, so I'm glad it was there. I just really disliked the way it was presented. What you should feel like once you've played a great mystery game is, I want to go back to this company again and again and get more of their games. Whereas my feeling was, okay, that was a good case, but the last part really exhausted me. The next couple of games I play, they're not going to be Cryptic Killers games. I'm going to go for something simpler, something where I know I'm not going to be confronted with a very long deciphering task. What did I mean when I said sinners can also be saints? Well, in the Murder in Miami case by Cryptic Killers, there is online content that is of a quality that you're only going to be able to get by having online elements in your game. You get to listen to different recorded phone calls and things like that. They do something similar in Murder at a Movie Theater. They actually use the same American voice actor for both games. I've reviewed Murder of a Musician before on this channel, and it's one I recommend. It also has some great uses of online content. In this game, you can actually hear the last recording session before the saxophonist died. You can hear a very nice bit of jazz, and then you hear a very out of tune sounding saxophone before someone dies. That's a lot of fun. It also has some interesting CCTV footage of different cars and things like that. That'll help you rule out some suspects. And Murder at Merivale Manor, proving to be a bit of a tongue twister for me so far. This also does include some good online content. There's some interesting enhanced audio that you can listen to as well. That's a lot of fun. I just wish that instead of putting their cipher paper online, they had put it as part of the original game, or at least added an envelope that you can open at the end of the game to get access to. If you do play this game and you don't want to go to the trouble of printing out that cipher, I would recommend using your smartphone, as you can put it beside the paper. It will probably make it easier to track things. We saw in Sin 3 that sinners can also be saints, and saints can also become sinners. Most detective games you'll come across will have hints. The one thing that worries me when I see it is if a game says, for every problem, every stage, there are 2 hints and then we give you a solution. So my instant reaction to that is 2 hints is not enough to cover the spectrum of what you need to go through in order to nudge somebody in the right direction. The saint from earlier that's become a sinner here is the Masters of Crime series. Although I didn't have any problems solving the puzzles in Vendetta, I did have an issue with one of them in Incognito, and I still don't know how to find the solution. Thankfully, they did give me the solution so I could progress in the game, but it would be nice to know how to solve it. If you're going to play the game on a live stream, give me a warning, give me a tip, and I'll be there to check it out to see if you can solve it. Another game that is a sinner for this reason is Hush Money. This is a very small mystery case. Starts out with a wallet full of different pieces of information, and you can use this wallet as your starting point to find out who the murder victim is. And once you've done that, most of the case plays out online. I'll talk a little bit more about this game later in this video. It is a sinner in that it does use this 2 hints and then we'll give you the solution later model. Where it gets particularly egregious is that at one stage in the game, your task is to find the email password, the bank password, and the messaging app password. So all those 3 things, but they're only going to give you 2 hints to do it. If they'd broken those into 3 different tasks, 2 hints probably would have been more than enough. But to get 3 things just off 2 hints could be an issue with this game. Hopefully, when they come out with a new game, as I've heard they're planning to, they will add more hints to help the game become smoother for people, because you want to have the satisfaction of solving things yourself rather than finding a solution. So receiving a hint can be nice, but you don't want to be told too much. So it's good to have a series of hints that just nudge you towards the right direction. One of the saints in this category would definitely be any game from the Cryptic Killers brand. They're always excellent with their hint systems. Others that I would recommend are the iDetective, Detective Stories brand games. Also, hidden games are wonderful at giving nice nudging hints. Next in the Saints Become Sinners department, we get to sin number 5. And the sin here is including web addresses that do not exist in your game. So often you will get in these games pages like this, where you have stories connected to the local community. Some of the information from these games are typically used in ruling out suspects or perhaps providing motives for people to do certain things. There are also things like advertisements included amongst these articles. 1, they help fill up the space, and 2, they do create a realistic impression that this is a game that is taking place in a real world. It looks like a real newspaper because real newspapers have advertising. So what's the problem here? The problem is that sometimes in the Cryptic Killers cases, when they have newspapers, they also include web addresses on the advertising. And if you take the time to open up your computer, type in the address, you realize these websites do not exist. My question for the game designers is this: why include things in your game that are going to be a letdown to the player? The player sees the website, or maybe there's going to be a clue on this website. Maybe I'm going to see a picture in the background of one of the characters, and that could be used as an alibi or something like that. Instead, I go and put the address in, nothing's there, I just have a flat feeling. I don't understand why you're including this content in your games. And in the Sinners Become Saints department, hidden games cases, if you see a web address at any time during the game, you can visit that web address. And Vendetta returns to being a saint once more when it comes to this category. If you see any website address within the game, that's a website that the game designers have created to enhance your experience of playing the game. Definitely check it out. Next, I'd like to discuss some games that have very nice user-friendly interfaces for their games. One is Who Killed Mia? I mentioned earlier that the Zoey Gardner case in the Unsolved Case Files series would be a great one for teenage girl sleepovers. Add this to that list. This is a beginner to intermediate game, but it has a very smooth interface. It's based around a murder of an influencer, and because it's set in that world, there's a lot of online video content. It flows very smoothly. You scan a QR code at the beginning, and you can progress online while you use the game's offline content as well. It is a beginner to intermediate case, so it won't be for everybody. But if you're someone new to this genre, this might be a good game for you. You can usually pick it up for a pretty cheap price on Amazon. Hush Money also has a very good interface. One of the things I like about their interface is you can access a messaging app. It's the messaging app used by the victim, and you can search through their messages, and it just feels so natural. It feels like you've just picked up somebody else's phone because you're just going through their messages. And they have done a good job at avoiding Sin 1, which is the depth of content issue. They do look like real message chains. Of course, they're not years long as as long as they would be if you're looking at, the text exchanges between people in a relationship, but they're long enough that you get a good sense of what's going on and what the relationship dynamics are. Another game that has a fantastic piece of online content is The Case of Percy de Vere. One of the things you can do in this box is you can scan a QR code and it'll take you to a interactive 3D photo of the crime scene. And you can click on different pieces of evidence throughout this scene and get some more information about them. Murder at Mediluck Medicines is a fantastic game, and I'll give you a quick look at one of the cool ways the game introduces some online content. This is a game set in a lab, and one of the pieces of content is just a delivery receipt for something that was delivered to the lab. You can scan that, you can go and check the information to see when it arrived and maybe who signed for it, so you can take that into account when constructing your timeline of events in this case. It's really nice to have a common everyday object that you can interact with very quickly and get some additional material, and it makes the game feel a lot more immersive. There are a couple of games that aren't exactly online experiences, but you will be using your device, in this case a smartphone, for the duration of the game. Echoes is actually pre-downloaded onto an app. It's quite bulky. It'll take up about 1 gigabyte of space onto your phone, so it won't be for everybody. But it does offer a really interesting experience. In this game, you'll have a selection of cards, 24 cards in all, and you'll be looking to arrange these cards into 6 chapters, each chapter having 4 parts, so 4 cards per chapter. And how it works is you scan a card, you will listen to the sounds that were heard around this object. I'll have a more in-depth review of this one in the future and play some of the audio to you. Another game that requires your use of a smartphone at all times is Chronicles of Crime. I also have an addition to the Chronicles of Crime series. It's an expansion called Noir. These are very interesting games. I really like them. The unique thing about these games is they're really good at solving that depth of content problem that I talked about earlier. Because it's a smartphone game, you never really know how much of the game you have seen. You never really know how much of the world you have actually visited during your case. For example, in this game Noir, I solved the first case without visiting all of the locations. I also didn't speak to all of the characters in the game, so if I do choose to play it again in the future, I can have a different experience. So in some sense, these games have an enhanced replayability that the document dump style games do not have, because the document dump style games, you're going to see all of that information. Whereas in Chronicles of Crime, you might come to the end of the game and find you missed something, and you're going to have the opportunity to play it again from scratch. I had a bit of trouble with one part of the second case of Noir, so I'm looking forward to playing that one over the next couple of weeks.